Welcome to a 12 and HR lesson. Today, I'm going to be a grumpy old man. Am I going to be a grumpy old man? Well, I guess it's the question of whether or not you think I'm telling you off for not doing things you ought to do, by doing things out of habit. What I want you to do is question what you're doing because you've always done it that way, but also specifically, can you squeeze a work sample in there? Because work samples can really be that secret sauce that you've been missing. So let's get into it. As you get older, certain things start to creep up. I don't know when I started providing sound effects to my movement. Mostly when I'm getting up and down from things. I started making those unavoidable commentary to the rest of the world that I'm a bit creaky when I'm doing this up and down thing. Maybe you've started doing that too. Maybe it's a me thing, maybe it's a male thing. Hard to say, but it's something that comes for all of us. One of the things that I can see in my future is curmudgeonliness. Grumpy old man. Everybody's doing it wrong. Everybody's an idiot. No one's as wise as me. What were you thinking? I'm really hoping that's in my future, that's not my present. But I'll give myself the benefit of the doubt. But today, I'm going to really push that line. I'm going to get way closer than I'd like to on the question of, am I looking at the world going, why are you all doing this? Why are you doing it that way? You're missing a major opportunity. So let's get into it. What I want to talk to you about is how most people are doing a thing that is very important, very straightforward, and how they're doing it quite wrong. Not all the time wrong, but they're doing things out of habit where habit should be questioned continuously. Because it's quite important, and that is about how we recruit people. I've done a lot of recruiting myself. I've been recruited and interviewed many times myself as well. So I have, to my mind, a pretty good general understanding of how we do things around here. What is normal? I'm also going to get a little bit academic with you to say, well, this is what we are doing and this is what we should be thinking about and this is how we could be doing it better, but we're not really examining it the way that we should. So what is recruitment? Recruitment essentially is finding a group of people who potentially could do a job and picking the one most likely to succeed. There are two things that I do want to quickly tangent off into. One is what is the big picture when it comes to recruitment, and what is the recruitment process trying to achieve? And that is essentially, it is trying to put together our best calculated, estimated guess of the probability of this person being good at their job in a year's time or 6 months' time. What is the point in which they are just going to be up and running, and what is the probability that they will be successful at that stage? It isn't a black and white science, nor can we get to any level of absolute certainty. What we can do is paint as accurate picture that we can of the probability. The other side of this is that this is something we should be thinking and looking at all the time, is every person who doesn't work out for us, every person who turned out to be, they went septic, they went toxic, they're just not quite right. At some stage, someone said, yep, that's the person. We choose them. How did we get there? Were they the right person? Something went wrong quickly? Something went wrong eventually? Did they work for us for 15 years before going sour? Or were they just a bad choice in the first place? And the question in that situation is, what did we miss? Did we paint as accurate a picture that we possibly could? Or did we paint too rough a picture? We took the person because they're the best that we could find, or we got bad data. We thought that they were likely to succeed. Turns out that estimation was faulty. when you get into the question of recruitment and the question of selection tools, you have to ask yourself the question, what is the validity of this test? What is the probability that the information that I am getting is giving me a good understanding of whether or not they will be successful or not? And this is what I am observing. There is a significant over-reliance on interviewing and personality testing and a significant underutilization of the work sampling test. The short takeaway from all of this is question your reliance upon interview, really question the validity of personality testing, and look to see if you can do a work sample test whenever it fits. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't, but at least ask the question. Okay, let me get into explaining myself. Take, for instance, the perennial question, tell me about a time you've dealt with conflict in the workplace. That sounds like good information, but the question is, to what extent is dealing with conflict part of someone's job? Do they deal with conflict with a co-worker an hour a week, 1 out of 40? That's a lot of conflict in the workplace if that's what you're dealing with. Are they dealing with conflict in the workplace 1 hour a month? In which case we're talking 1 out of 400. If we're talking 1 hour out of 400, that's less than 1%. That's a quarter of 1%. Is that a big, significant part of the job? No. This feels like something you want someone to know, but this is one of the many, 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 many things that you want them to be good at. All of those little social skills that are just a small part of someone's capability, but for some reason we do deep dives on such small skills that in most professional workplaces aren't that important. What we need from this person is to do the job that is the majority of their work, and we are focusing on things that are probably quite minute, but they feel like good data. They feel like they are accurate. I'm not even going to get into the question of, are we testing on their capacity to give the right answer? But that's for another day. Similar sort of thing you could ask with personality testing. You could do a test and find that they are mid-range to high on the introversion side of the scale. Okay, well, to what extent is that a predictor of success? Maybe it is. Very good chance it's not. But what it gives us is the simulacrum of evidence. It gives us the appearance of good data. But we have to ask ourselves, is that really good data? Or it looks like it is, even though it isn't. What you should be looking to do, and there's lots of different recruitment tools, but this is a recruitment and selection tool that I've always found highly effective. The science also supports that it's effective, but it's criminally underused, and that is the work sample test. If you want to know how good someone is going to be at doing the job, you get them to do the job and then you watch them and then you talk to them about it. It's not rocket science. It makes so much sense that this is a logical thing to do, yet we don't do it. Let me give you an example about how I've done this in the past. And to be really upfront, I didn't design this. I inherited it, but I really liked it, so I used it as much as I could. When I worked in factories, we regularly had to recruit engineers, the people who go out, fix, repair, and replace machinery. And interviewing them was useful, but of limited use in understanding someone's capacity to do the job. You can sit them down and get them to explain what they do when they attend a breakdown, have to fix something. But very quickly you get into the question of the difference between talking the talk and walking the walk. Some guys could sit there and interview really well and could talk the talk great. Other guys weren't that good at explaining themselves, but fantastic on the tools. So what do? Well, you put them on the tools. The engineering manager had worked out a system, had worked out a series of tasks and tests, and he would get them to do them. He'd get them to do some turning, he'd get them to do some welding, he'd get them to do a basic repair, a simple maintenance task. And very quickly he could see the difference between the candidates who really know their way around and the candidates that sort of knew their way around but were sort of figuring it out as they went. And who were the better engineers? Definitely the first guys. Definitely the first group of the people that we wanted. And that's a totally different set of data and much more accurate set of the data than sitting them down and interviewing them. Why don't we do this? We don't do this because it's complex and it's hard and it's nuanced. Every single work sample test requires you and the hiring manager to say, right, well, how can we give them some work to do? I've done it with planning where I've got them to do some scheduling, some basic questions, some parameters, and some trick questions or some advanced stuff that they could spot or they could ask for should they get there. What about this? What about that? That's not something that it's easy to do. But it's not that hard for you and the manager to say, what's a scenario that we could give them or a situation in which we could see them, we could put them into action. If we were doing this for HR, if I was doing this for ER, I'd say, right, here's a case, here's a situation. I could get AI to generate one pretty quickly and say, right, what would you do in this situation? Here's a scenario. Go walk the walk. I want to see how you go about it. Can we do it every situation? No. But what we don't do is we don't look, and we probably should. So the question is, how curmudgeonly was that? How cantankerous, how grumpy? Hopefully not too much. I certainly wasn't trying to. What I'm trying to do is just to get you to think. A little bit of pause button, a little bit of, why, how can we do things better? Are we doing things this way because that's how we did it last time? Or are we doing things because that's the best way to do it in this situation? If we have an enemy, it is habit. Anyway, thank you for listening. If you want to check out our stuff, pragmatichrm.nz. We have courses, we have services. If you think that we're of use to you, if you think that we can help, check us out, pragmatichrm.nz. If you don't want to, please like us on the socials that you found us on. But other than that, I'll catch you next time. Cheers.